Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. For those of you who are new, I am a lawyer based in Australia, and I predominantly provide legal commentary and analysis on high-profile cases, with the most dominant one being Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and their ongoing defamation and domestic violence case. So if you're interested in those topics, make sure to check out those videos as well. All right, so if you've clicked on this video, then I'm going to assume you know who Jeffrey Epstein is. But if you don't, he can be summarized in the following words: an extremely rich, mentally ill pedophile who is now dead. This video, however, is about his long-term lover and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. She is also another incredibly rich and previously very influential person who met Jeffrey in the early 90s, and they've pretty much been inseparable ever since, at least until 2008, when Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested for sexual crimes against minors. Ghislaine was arrested by the FBI on the 2nd of July of this year, and she was charged with the following 6 offenses. She is pleading not guilty and is currently awaiting trial at a federal detention center in Brooklyn. Her trial date has been set for the 12th of July next year, and it is expected to last for 3 weeks. So today's video is dealing with the immunity clause that Jeffrey Epstein brokered back in 2008 with the prosecution in the Southern District of Florida. So the question is she actually protected by it? The deal itself, which is a non-prosecution agreement, is not publicly available. So I don't have access to it, and I haven't read it personally, which means that any commentary I can provide on it is very limited. But what we do know is that, as I said, it was brokered back in 2008 between Jeffrey Epstein and Alexander Costa, who was the US District Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. A little fact about Alexander Costa: he later went on to be the labor minister as part of Trump's administration from 2017 to 2019. So essentially, a non-prosecution agreement is a contract between the prosecution and a defendant in a certain case. It's essentially a list of conditions that a defendant must meet in exchange for a promise from the prosecution that they will not be indicted. And unlike typical plea bargains, these agreements, as I said, are not made available to the public. So the deal basically stated that if Epstein pleaded guilty to the lesser offense of soliciting prostitution from a minor, he would only serve 18 months in a county jail. Now that in itself is ridiculously, almost criminally lenient when you consider what he has done. To make things worse, he actually only ended up serving 13 months on a work release program, which basically meant he woke up in jail and then hopped in a limousine that took him off to do whatever he classified as work, and then dropped him off at night to spend the night in jail. If this isn't a blatant display of what money, power, and influence can grant you in this world, I honestly don't know what is. But this is the part of the deal that we are interested in for the purposes of this video and for the purposes of Ghislaine Maxwell. The deal stated that the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein. And then it went on to name a handful of women, I think 4 women, but Ghislaine Maxwell was not one of these women. Last year, a federal judge ruled that this agreement was void because the victims were not notified of it by the prosecution before they brokered it, which is part of the law. You need to notify the victims that you're going to broker a deal with a defendant. But unfortunately, this ruling has since been overturned, which means that the agreement has been upheld. This decision is now being appealed at the federal appeals court, so it's not the end of the line. But what's important here is that Ghislaine's lawyers are arguing that she is protected by this immunity clause. And so she cannot possibly be prosecuted for any of the crimes that she is being charged with. But are they correct in arguing this? Let's have a look at the weaknesses or the holes in their argument. First of all, as I mentioned, Ghislaine is not expressly named in this agreement. Secondly, there's the issue of jurisdiction. The charges being brought against Ghislaine arise out of the Southern District of New York, not Florida, so two completely separate jurisdictions. And so simply by virtue of this fact alone, the agreement can't possibly apply to Ghislaine in this instance. And this was confirmed by Jeffrey Berman, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Next, we have the issue of the specific time frame that Ghislaine is being charged over. So she's being charged for conduct that took place between 94 and 97. So if Ghislaine's victims during the 90s were not known to the government when this deal was brokered in 2008, it can be argued that this agreement doesn't cover Ghislaine's conduct because it doesn't even apply to her specific victims. Now, like I said, the evidence in this case is still quite limited because a lot of the documents and other evidence are under seal, and most importantly because I don't have access to this actual agreement and I can't read it for myself. So far, these are the weaknesses that have come to light. If you know of any others, please let me know in the comments below. All right, now for the limitations or the aspects that can favor Ghislaine Maxwell. First of all, the language used in the agreement itself. So even though Ghislaine was not expressly named, it did say that any other co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein are also protected by this clause. And because of that fact, it is implied by the broad language used in the agreement that she is covered by this protection. Specifically regarding the immunity clause, this is the only advantage, I suppose, that I could think of with regards to Ghislaine. Now, there is a woman, an author, Ms. Sarnoff, who believes that Ghislaine is completely covered by this immunity clause, and she's even gone on the news and talked extensively about this. But without sounding condescending, I think the U.S. District Attorney for the Southern District of New York knows more about this than an author who is not even a lawyer and who is not trained and practiced in that area. Speaking of limitations and weaknesses, there is another potential weakness in this case that is not really related to the immunity clause, and that is the issue of time. Now, there is no statutory limitation to bringing these charges against Ghislaine. These sex crimes have no expiry date in layman's terms. A lot of offenses do have a statutory limit attached to them, which means that there is a finite period of time for prosecuting these crimes. But that doesn't apply in this case, which is good news. However, in general, from my admittedly limited experience as a lawyer, I'm still quite young, but I've learned in my short career and from learning, of course, from going to law school and reading thousands upon thousands of cases, that courts really don't like historical cases. So when a lot of time elapses, there are a lot of issues that come with that. Memories fade. Evidence can fade or disappear or be forever lost. And memory is such an important aspect when that is all that a victim has. If all they have to rely on is their word and their own recollection of what happened to them, that is their primary source of evidence. And so the more time elapses, the more, I suppose, unreliable their recollection becomes in the eyes of a court and a jury. And I'm speaking from experience here. There are such strong cases that I have been involved in or aware of in which the prosecution decided not to prosecute simply because too much time had elapsed. So I suspect that this passage of time is going to be really played up and used by Ghislaine's defense team to her advantage. The integrity and the veracity of the recollection of these victims is going to be directly attacked. Because when you consider the time frame for which these crimes are alleged to have taken place, 94 to 97, that's a long time. Let me put this in perspective. This full-grown human being that is talking to you right now was born around that time. I mean, at this point, in 4 years, spanning all the way back to 94, would be 3 solid decades ago. So we do have to acknowledge that this lapse of time is a serious disadvantage, especially if there's no independent evidence to back up what these victims are saying. Having said that, what really plays against Ghislaine and against other perpetrators like her is the number of victims that are coming out to speak against her. If there was just one victim, that's when these cases can really fall apart. But there is a positive correlation between the number of victims and the success rate of a case. Take Bill Cosby, for example, or Harvey Weinstein. So what all of these men or these criminals have in common is the sheer number of victims that have spoken up against them. And Ghislaine is pretty much in the same boat. She doesn't just have the one victim speaking up. She has multiple. And so, of course, you don't need me to tell you that the more people who are not even related to each other and have no connection to each other come out with similar stories against someone, the more likely it is that these allegations are true. All right, so to sum up, I don't believe that Ghislaine is protected by this immunity clause. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein himself wasn't protected by it last year when he was arrested. Then why on earth would Ghislaine Maxwell be protected by it? That's why I kind of take issue with what this author is saying, Ms. Sarnoff. Don't go on public television and spread misinformation if you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not pulling this all out of my own head. This is not just a result of my analysis of the situation. This is straight out of the district attorney's mouth. So yeah, that's all I have to say on this topic. As always, don't forget to let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in a future video. Bye.